I'm realizing there's something bigger than, there's more potential here than I have been aware of previously. He thought everybody under the influence of this stuff, and it's not just the mixture, he realizes, it's the scopolamine. He says everybody under the influence of this substance seems incredibly candid. History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. The very first thing to ever be called truth serum is something called scopolamine, or scopolamine if you're one of the cool kids. There are these two doctors we want to introduce. They're both German, Karl Gauss and Bernhard Kronig, and they popularized a treatment for women during childbirth, which is going to make some of our fellow listeners today absolutely cringe. They gave them some scopolamine or scopolamine, and they gave it in combination with morphine. And that's where we fast forward to 1916. Here's the guy who's usually introduced as the protagonist of Truth Serum.
Yeah, this is Truth Serum 0. His name is Robert Ernest House, Dr. House, if you will. He's an obstetrician. It's 1916. He is using the same technique we're talking about, the old twilight sleep birthing method. And the birth goes well, just as you would expect. The patient appears to be sleeping. And Dr. House is like, okay, well, we've got the child. We need to weigh this sucker. Let's see how heavy it is. But they can't find the scale. And something very strange happens.
Yeah, they're looking for the scale. Of course, the husband here is freaking out, right? And he's pictured this guy running around going, scale, 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 scale. I can't find the scales. Hey, doc, I'm sorry, I don't know where they are. And then the mother, who is still in this state of twilight sleep and sedated, just pipes up, even though she appears to be unconscious, without really moving or becoming animated. She just says, they're in the kitchen on a nail behind the picture. And this is Dr. House's like sound cue moment. You know, there it is. That's the double take. Yeah.
Yeah. She's awake. She can respond at least, but she still appears to be asleep. It's the equivalent of, being a mortician or something. You're working on a patient and they just like stand up. They're like, oh no, I'm fine. Hello. No, we're all good. That's what it reminds me of, I guess.
100%. Yeah. And Dr. House, this is the episode that gets most reported in his story, but he encountered other very similar events as he was administering his version of this twilight sleep method. And later he would write about this. Matt, I've been doing a couple of voices here. I think you should do this when you got a good like turn of the century doctor voice.
Let me try my Dr. House. Under the influence of the drug, there is no imagination. They cannot create a lie because they have no power to think or reason.
I love this. I love this because you nailed Hugh Laurie's American accent.
I tried.
Yeah, no, you nailed. I knew instantly. So the fantastic comedian, actor, and honestly, dude, very talented pianist. I feel like more people should know that. He is a British, I believe he's British, UK national, and he has a very specific approach to an American accent, and it sounds good. If you're listening to it, obviously we're fans.
Yep.
Yeah, but you nailed it. And what he's saying here, this Dr. House, whether we're talking about the fictional one or Robert Ernest here, what he's saying is, I'm realizing there's something bigger than, there's more potential here than I have been aware of previously. He thought everybody under the influence of this stuff, and it's not just the mixture, he realizes, it's the scopolamine. He says everybody under the influence of this substance seems incredibly candid, right? They're lucid, but they're not, their speech doesn't have the prevarications or the deceit that you would hear in common conscious speech. So he becomes a good guy. He says, I could use this substance to help prevent false confessions, to help people get out of jail. And this is something that a lot of folks don't know about truth serum. What we're talking about today is something that originally was meant to exonerate people who were put away by a crooked system or were pressured by law enforcement. So in this odd series of events, Dr. House finds himself becoming an advocate for criminal justice reform, and he cracks a deal to try this out on prisoners in the Dallas County Jail. Now, it's long been an observation that there are very few guilty people in prison or jail, at least if you ask them, right? Nobody did it, but he wanted to see if it was true. So how did this test go down?
So there's two guys who were believed, at least by authorities, to be guilty of a crime. But these guys are doing that thing, right? Maintaining their innocence no matter what. Even while they're doped up with this substance. And interestingly enough, because of that, because they maintain their innocence while under the influence of these drugs, they were acquitted. And that's certainly not the only time that it was used in that manner. But scopolamine then found its way into a court of law with a judge looking at it in 1926.
Yeah. So as this is taken off, right, it is just like Twilight Sleep before it. There are people who see it as a silver bullet solution, and there are people who see it as tremendously controversial, if not dangerous, unethical, and illegal. So in 1926, we see this court case where a judge rejects statements that are brought to him, or purported evidence brought to him via scopolamine, because this judge has questions about not the ethics, but the science. And they're saying, and I think there's a valid statement at this point, it's only 1926. They're saying, this hasn't been around for a while, guys. So I don't know if we can count this as science just yet. Because that's what people used to do. They used to apply critical thinking in those ways back in the day. Spoiler alert, the 1920s had some problems. But so do the 2020s. So despite these court cases where we see this stuff dismissed, we know that throughout the 1920s and 1930s, law enforcement across the U.S. would use this on suspects, and in other cases, judges did permit the statements the subjects gave while under the influence, even if you could make a case that this was in violation of their Fifth Amendment rights, especially if they didn't consent to getting shot up.
Well, yeah, not especially that, Ben. But there's the other side effect of scopolamine that we talked about at the top. It also tends to wipe the old memory space of what you did while you were under the influence. So you could be, violating the Fifth Amendment essentially on yourself, and you would have no idea what you did unless there was a recording of it. And even then, if it's just someone taking notes or something of a meeting, how do you prove that that person actually said that?
Yeah, and then there's another potential issue. Like we're just in the here are the facts part. We'll get to the crazy stuff as well, folks, but you need to know all the facts here are pretty crazy and damning as well. There's this other thing that goes a step farther, which is, imagine you wake up, you're in jail, you vaguely remember interacting with the police in an interview. You're in jail, you're having this situation where it's like the Hangover movie. Like I said, what happened? I said, I killed someone. I've never killed anybody. No, really, you have to believe me. And then Johnny Law says, sorry, pal, we've got you because you did confess and we have a record of it. And it doesn't matter that you don't remember it because we saw you say it. Sticky. And we'll see why. We'll see why this is so sticky. But the deal is that it's bigger than just judges and police informants and the legal criminal system. Boom, 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 boom. The police were not the only people paying attention to this. Uncle Sam overall, super into the idea. The Nazi Party, super into the idea. The Soviet Union loves it. This is like the sliced bread of spycraft. Let's go forward to World War II. So the U.S. has this intelligence outfit called the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, the predecessor of the modern-day CIA. They loved the idea of a truth serum, and they experimented with so much different stuff to see if there was a possible truth serum. Here's what they wanted. Ideally, what they wanted was something you could apply to a suspect. They weren't really thinking of consent at this point. They were just saying something we can shoot up someone with, a pill we can force them to take, something we could slip in a drink or a cigarette that will 100% of the time get them to tell us the truth. And there was a reason they wanted this, obviously, enemy intelligence. Obviously, you could save people's lives or prevent attacks. But they went through a lot of stuff. They didn't stop at scopolamine. They were experimenting with mescaline, which would have been unfamiliar to a lot of U.S. residents at the time. And they were also experimenting with cannabis, which would have been at least passingly familiar to a lot of people. And then, side note, which we could talk about later, during the 50s and 60s, the CIA tried out some other drugs, searching for a true truth serum, most notably barbiturates and LSD during Project MK Ultra. And what they found was, they were disappointed. They were not happy with their endeavors.
Yeah, they thought they were making some kind of truth serum and deploying that, but really they were just opening people's minds up too wide, maybe so wide that they were like, "Oh, I love you, man. I love everything." No, that's not true. But it was definitely an odd situation applying psychedelics as a truth serum, or the concept of even using psychedelic substances as a truth serum. So we've got a quote here. And this comes from, is this from MK Ultra?
Yeah, this is like a CIA summary from analysis of what went down, and it later got declassified. And I think you and I in particular had this thing when we were younger, where whenever we learned something had been declassified, we thought it would be so juicy, and we just I think we were both just continually surprised by how much of it seems to be government agents saying, "Well, that did not work." And that's what we got here. So the line is, the quote is this: "No such magic brew as the popular notion of true serum exists. The barbiturates, by disrupting defensive patterns, may sometimes be helpful in interrogation, but even under the best conditions, they will elicit an output contaminated by deception, fantasy, garbled speech, etc." So,
and a whole lot of whoa.
Whoa. Okay, where are the plans? Triangles, man. The plans are in triangles. That's like the most planny shape. I can't tell you, what is it? Well, I guess can you hear green?
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
And they're all, I'm thinking about, that's been used to great effect in comedy. Like it happened in Get Smart. There's this whole thing about someone under interrogation who is just boring people to tears because they're talking about everything except, like, they're giving you all the information that happens in their head, stream of consciousness, real time. A recent example of this is from the Ant-Man films. This isn't a big spoiler, but did you see both? I can't remember if it's the first one or the second one.
I have not. Big fan of Paul Rudd. I have not seen him in the Marvel verse.
All right, just saving it. saving it for the right time.
Mhm.
Well, without spoiling it for you, Matt, there is a tremendously loquacious character who occurs in both films, and he's like the buddy sidekick who is known for being a motor mouth and very talkative. So there is a bad guy who dopes this dude up, this sidekick, with a truth serum, and the guy just won't shut up. And it's like his opinions about Morrissey and modern art and like, you know, what he where he thinks people are at emotionally. It's worth it just to watch. You can just watch the bit on YouTube, but the OSS
sounds
found
awesome.
something like that. They found something like that. Like, where are the other Russian spies? And I'm like, well, you know, where are they at emotionally? I think they're really stressed. You know, you're kind of living this crazy life. And you guys, did you ever hear music though? Like really hear it? Because I was earlier at a band, and, you know, like it just goes on and on and on.
Mhm.
So OSS, long story short, disappointed. And there were lots of other things they used that all had something in common. They were all either sedatives or hypnotics, but they had this ability to alter your higher brain function. And now we are going to mispronounce some chemical names, or at least I am.
No,
I
me
know
too.
what. Oh, you too. Okay, we're all doing it. All right. I'll start with an easy one. Ethanol.
Yeah, ethanol. Telling you, it's one of the best. Benzodiazepines, sodium thiopental, amobarbital, and here's the big one. Oh, do you want to give it a shot?
Okay, let's give it a go. 3-quinaclidinyl benzylate.
That was pretty good, dude.
Well, we'll see, but I feel like a test for inebriation should require people to pronounce words like that, right?
Yep.
So they'll say, "Do you know what we injected you with?" And they'll say 3-quinaclidinyl, and they'll say, "Okay, he's ready." So the long story short version is just simply this: for more than 100 years, people have been trying to find a genuine, reliable truth serum. The biggest, strangest, most disturbing question of all is this: does any of this stuff actually work? Here's where it gets crazy. The answer is probably yes, but. Would you agree with that? Yes, but.
We usually don't yes but on this show, but in this case, I concur.